The source of the Guadalquivir lies in a deep gorge in a wild and forbidding part of southern Spain. At first sight, nothing betrays the name of this lovely trout creek, Great River. At 657 kilometers, it is only the fifth longest river on the Iberian Peninsula. It flows through Andalusia on its way to the Atlantic Ocean. At its upper reaches, water streams into the river from all sides and lets it swell steadily. Over millions of years, it dug itself ever deeper into the unfolded mountain range. To this day, tectonic activity is shifting the rock upward. For better or worse, the heartland of Andalusia lies at the mercy of the Guadalquivir. Without it, the great olive tree plantations along the water's edge would shrivel up and die. The river is a giver of life for this prosperous land, which North African conquerors called a Garden of Eden. The Moors stayed for more than 500 years and gave the stream its name. In Baeza, only little remains from this time. Instead, the world's arguably most beautiful slaughterhouse flaunts an impressive coat of arms. It was meant to demonstrate the power of Charles V, Spanish king and German emperor, over his subjects. Roman stone lions had stood unscathed for 2 millennia by the ancient fountain. That is, until anarchists struck off their heads 80 years ago during the Civil War. The ravages of time have taken their toll everywhere. For local restorers, there is plenty of work. The trio urgently needs to tend to the facade of a former seminary. At first glance, the lettering is barely visible.
We're restoring the hymns of praise. These wall inscriptions were made between the 16th and 18th centuries. They state the names of former graduates in commemoration of their successful exams. Every former master was allowed to immortalize his initials on the seminary walls. All names begin with M and O, short for maestro, followed by D for Don, Mr., plus the student's name. This one reads Maestro Don Francisco, and that one, Maestro Don Lucas de Rojas.
Even though this particular case doesn't involve holy figures or church frescoes, the restoration calls for the same delicate touch and strength. These young priests could hardly have imagined how much effort would be devoted to their academic titles so many centuries later. The following day revolves around maintenance work for a well system that dates back to the Renaissance. Behind Baeza, the Guadalquivir flows through the fertile Andalusia. At Montoro, the river leaves behind the mountainous country. The white villages along the riverbanks have been inhabited since ancient times. Now it is no longer far to the hottest major city in Europe, Córdoba. Roman Emperor Augustus had the first bridge over the Guadalquivir erected shortly before the birth of Christ. The town experienced a second golden age under the Arab caliphs. Back then, 500,000 people lived in what was one of the largest cities in the world, a center of power and learning. The Muezzin called to prayer at the magnificent mosque before it became a Christian cathedral. The splendor of its former minaret and facades recalls its past Oriental grandeur. Demonstrating his preeminence, The bishop had his coat of arms emblazoned into the Arab archway. The monumental city gate similarly evokes past triumphs, but the origins of the Crosses of May festival have been forgotten by most. Perhaps it was an ancient spring rite intermingled with Catholic saint worship, a typical cultural mix for Cordoba. The city misses no opportunity to dance and celebrate. To conclude the festival, one of the flower-adorned crosses is awarded the first prize. But it is not just for this public festival that locals and tourists alike flock to the historical old town. A second annual competition attracts visitors in droves. It takes place behind walls and gates. But today, the candidates are subject to the critical gaze of the public. Whose courtyard has the most beautiful flower arrangements? Signora Araceli desperately wants to win this year, and she has spared no effort. She wants the jury to be blown away at the sight of the sumptuous flowers in her courtyard garden. All plants are potted, as prescribed by the competition rules.
We always have scented plants, mint, lavender, for example, that we display on the ground. The basins, on the other hand, are filled with water plants. This courtyard alone boasts 400 plants. My house is rather special because it features a courtyard wall from the 12th century.
The courtyard is narrow and shady. For the flowers to blossom perfectly, frequent rehanging is essential. During the run-up to the completion, Rafa, her husband, races about non-stop.
We rehang the plants constantly. We want each of them to get some sun, but not too much. Otherwise they wither and fade too fast. So we're always rehanging them.
One particular song has been banned in this household, Despacito, slowly, which doesn't fit because there's so much to do.
And indeed, Araceli is constantly nurturing and tending to her plants. Their dog Chico gets hardly any attention at all these days.
My mother used to wedge empty thread spools, left over from her embroidery work, behind flower pots to stabilize them. My husband is a carpenter. He crafted these wooden discs for me. They let the pots hang evenly and without dripping. I've had visitors take these wooden discs home as souvenirs and also to copy them. Quite a few have gone missing by now.
Pero me faltan un montón. Me faltan mucho. El martes me llamó.
She let me know on Tuesday that she urgently needs 15 flower pots painted in blue, as though I had a magic wand. But by the next day, the pots had materialized.
Pues se los conseguí, se los traje. Por la mañana ya estaban aquí los tiestos.
He complains, but then he helps me anyway.
Me ayuda mucho.
In the days leading up to the award ceremony, all the candidates' courtyards are open to visitors. Araceli's daughter serves as a tour guide and explains the courtyard's history and its distinctive features. During medieval times, several large families lived in this house, sharing the well and the kitchen area. The visitors are astounded. Finally, Rafa can return to taking care of the plants. To water them, he repurposed an extendable fishing rod. It allows him to reach all the flower pots with the garden hose. Here, too, the waters of the Guadalquivir are a source of life. Everything is ready for the award jury. Now even Araceli has time to play again. Araceli's husband Rafa hails from the small rural town of La Rambla. He runs a carpentry workshop there. Even its village centre is relaxed and tranquil. The penchant for aviaries is a legacy of the Orient and the former Arab lords. Pottery is an even older tradition in La Rambla. He buys flower pots for the courtyard from the Montaño Doblas brothers.
My wife would like some large white ones that can be suspended.
Even in the age of digitalization and robots, it's fascinating to see the dexterity with which a master potter practices one of the world's oldest crafts. After a few minutes, the work is complete. On good days, Alvaro makes 10 pots an hour. That even includes his coffee break.
These bell-shaped cups, which were dug up in this area, are 4,000 years old, they say. The ceramic shards and cups are currently being exhibited at a museum. The typical clay of La Rambla is porous. It allows the vessel to sweat. The sweat covers the outer skin and keeps the water inside fresh. There were no refrigerators. It works like an ecological cooler. It doesn't require electricity since it cools the water naturally. When I used to work for my uncle Bartolo, truck upon truck would pass us, packed to the brim with water jugs. They were shipped all across Andalusia and into the rest of Spain. This went on for 100 years. 100 years or more.
Everything here is just like it was 4,000 years ago. The only thing that has changed is the type of pottery wheel. How to deal with the dwindling water resources is a highly relevant topic along the Guadalquivir. Water consumption is constantly on the rise in the world's largest olive-producing region. As a monoculture, the land is susceptible to soil erosion and disease. Not all of the farmers have subscribed to the view that you have to aim for higher yields at any price. José Miguel intends to carry forward the family heritage in a resource-friendly manner. He takes advantage of the technical capacities of a befriended business to inexpensively process the family plantation's oil. In Spain, even the better quality products are brought to market in plastic canisters and swiftly consumed. Only premium quality oil is filled into bottles that protect against light and warmth. The oil in the large tanks ends up in supermarkets and the cosmetics industry. The smaller tanks are reserved for organic quality oils, including José Miguel's. He is delighted with the oil's bluish hue. There are subtle differences in various olive oils based on vintage and location. Putting them to a test is an exciting moment for experts. Do they have the right colour and acidity? Is their fruitiness properly balanced with their bitter notes? The results of last year's harvest seem to be quite palatable.
The oil's quality, especially the best oil at the beginning of the first pressing, depends on the condition of the olives on the tree. You can't use any of the split open ones from the ground for this. Subsequently, the olives are cold pressed. No heat sources are used at the mill. This is the latest design for our family brand. We have, after all, been producing olive oil for 500 years. How did you come up with the name? The first record of our farm dates back to 1490. It's entirely possible that our oil sailed to America aboard Columbus's ships.
Olive oil comprises but a small part of Marco's business. The Bodega del Pino is renowned for its fine, sweet sherry. At 600,000 litres, the annual production is one of the largest in Spain. Marco's ambitions are geared towards exquisite niche products.
This is a selection of our specially certified kosher wine, which we manufacture with great enthusiasm. This is the first time in 500 years, since the Catholic kings expelled the Jews from Spain, in fact, that such a wine has been produced in the province of Córdoba. Kosher certification must be administered by a rabbi. In our case, this was the prominent Rabbi Lieberson, who very strictly applies the eligibility criteria. He sends his confidants and has them oversee the vineyard for a specific period of time. We take care of the technical side, but they are responsible for the actual handling.
Marco Antonio is enthusiastic about the family tradition. He has even set up a small museum for friends and special guests. The oak barrels hold especially fine wines that will be prohibitively expensive when they hit the wine shops. Even the boss indulges in them on very special occasions only.
As part of the winemaking process, the harvested grapes are initially exposed to the sun. It requires a lot of manual labor. The grapes are cut and then gently laid out in the sun. We're very dependent on the weather. Cooler years cause a lot of problems for us and dramatically lower our wine yield. This wine is more than 30 years old. We also keep Solera wines in barrels. They've been maturing for 80 to 85 years. Veritable gems that we can actually pour into a glass to taste and enjoy.
Between Córdoba and Sevilla, the Guadalquivir's gradient is hardly noticeable. It flows languidly through the plain. Time plays no role here, as it seems. Near Villanueva, a peculiar castle rises above the river valley. Concealed behind its walls is a power plant that once supplied a coal mine with electricity. Rustling shaft towers are testimony to 400 years of coal mining here. In the backcountry, several kilometers onward, archaeologists are searching for much older mineral resources. German and Spanish scientists are exploring the ruins of the Roman town of Monigua. A copper mine once brought enormous wealth to this spot. At some point in time, however, it sunk into complete oblivion. Excavation work has been ongoing for years, but new finds continue to be uncovered at surrounding cattle farms. Whenever that happens, Professor Shatner's team rushes out to the excavation site to document the new discovery.
I drew it this way to convey the depth of the steel. We believe there was once a bronze inscription here, a dedication with names.
This insignificant stone stele will remain here on the property. The drawing and data will be sent to the excavation archive. It's getting hot in the heart of Andalusia. Anyone still out in the sun now should quickly seek shade. The ruins of Munic are in the middle of a private cattle ranch. Opening and closing the cattle gates every time someone enters or exits is cumbersome but necessary, lest wild bulls suddenly appear. An exploratory excursion at midday is no joyride. Dust and heat are part of the archaeologist's daily excavation routine. All across the property, especially after rainfall, ancient architectural remains emerge from the earth. Foreman Manuel is familiar with the area and knows where to look. This rock was not yet visible last year. Its color is unusual.
Come on, let's set it up right. Okay? 1, 2, 3.
The archaeologists thought it might be worthwhile to examine the underside. This time, however, they make no new discoveries. This tame young deer is only interested in the next watering hole. For the search party too, it's time to take a siesta. At the height of summer, temperatures in Muniqua can surpass 45 degrees. New finds are examined in the slightly cooler excavation house.
Vielleicht haben wir hier eine Gottheit vor uns.
Joel, what kind of surprise have you brought us? I was on my way to the excavation site by motorcycle when I saw it lying there, half buried.
Professor Shatner is certain that the head of marble is an unusual find. In his 60 years of excavation work, he has rarely stumbled upon a piece of art like this.
Dating Roman ideal sculpture poses a fundamental problem. You have to use your imagination. A neck, a body. That means it was a full body sculpture for sure.
Muniqua's temple district thrones over the land like an oversized monolith. It's a surprising sight to visitors. No one would expect to see a monumental structure like this in the midst of this wasteland. Though readily accessible to visitors, only few amateurs come here. The scientists from Germany and Spain don't mind. It allows them to work undisturbed. They make their way to the temple district once the intense summer heat has subsided. State-of-the-art technology allows for very precise data collection. For Manuel Canto, being involved is hugely important, even though he officially retired long ago. Doris Scheffler has exchanged the theodolite for the camera. What at first sight appears to be a snapshot for the family album is in fact cutting-edge data collection.
We're making a 3D recording with relatively new photogrammetry technology. It's called Structure for Motion, or SFM. We take a large number of photos from different angles and then use special software to calculate a three-dimensional point cloud model. Then we can generate views and cuts for publication.
The monumental temple ensemble proves that from the 1st century AD onwards, this city was the religious and administrative center of the mining district. For Manuel Canto, Muniqua has become a home.
Within a radius of 22 kilometers, I know every detail here, like the back of my hand. I grew up on a farm about 8 kilometers away. From an early age, my siblings and I helped my father in the forest. We made charcoal. There were many farmers in these hills, my family included. A day's wage was 10 or 12 pesetas. Today, that'd be 7 or 8 cents. Incredible. But that's how life was back then. I came here to work as an excavator in the 60s. 50 labourers did excavation work in House 1. 25 to 30 people worked in House 11, year for year, every single day. That was my life. I pretended that it was mine.
The abundant revenues from mining and the olive oil trade helped finance the only monumental terraced sanctuary outside of Italy. Fortuna and Hercules were worshipped here. Manuel is pleased that even after decades of excavating, new discoveries continue to be made in Muniqua. And he is very pleased that his advice is still much in demand. Near Monigua, a ford has made river crossings possible since ancient times. The castle of the Margraves of Villanueva thrones above the ford. In Arab times, a caravanserai and mosque are said to have stood here, places of rest for merchants and animals who had braved the river crossing. Below the ford, Romans loaded ore, oil and wine. Later they shipped coal, first to Sevilla and then overseas from there. For the longest time, the great river was Spain's gateway to the world. In the Golden Age following the discovery of America, the Crown's fleets brought enormous treasures to Sevilla along the Guadalquivir. Especially silver and spices were landed at the foot of the former defensive tower from Moorish times. It was from here that Magellan embarked on the first circumnavigation of the globe in 1519. Especially at the height of summer, the Moorish conquerors from Africa will have felt at home here, like in Marrakesh. Fountains and narrow alleys, similar to Arab Medinas, shape Sevilla's cityscape. The spirit of combative Christianity also seems to be alive and well everywhere here. Catholic rites and customs are celebrated here in Sevilla, some opulently, some less so. The shop for candles and devotional objects, run by the Lopez Soriano family, plays an important role in the preservation of religious traditions. Besides candles, it sells figures of Jesus, Mary, and the saints to suit every taste and budget. Especially during preparations leading up to Holy Week, there is no getting around the old wax mill. The owner, Manuel Lopez, is proud of the long company history.
Our business was founded in 1845 in a village near Seville called Puebla del Rio. My great-grandmother owned a farm where she used the wax of beehives to produce candles.
It
comes as no surprise that a candle factory stores long, perfectly shaped candles. It would also seem reasonably obvious that they would now be made ready to be shipped. But in the Lopez Soriano family's candle factory, something completely unexpected happens. The perfectly formed candles are broken into pieces and flung into a melting pot.
As you can see, we're melting down the candles. Though they look new, they've already been used, lit once and already finished. The fraternities of the Holy Week request new candles every time. The members pay for the candle year for year, and thus also get a new one. They bring the used candles back to us, we melt them down, and cast new ones. Voila!
It seems almost like a modern Sisyphean labour, melting barely used candles in order to shape new ones out of the hot wax. Every colour has its own meaning. White symbolises purity and is dedicated to the Virgin Mary. Concentration is called for. The length of each wick is meticulously measured. The wicks are dipped in wax and pulled back out again in slow motion. Gradually, the wax adheres to the core. The candle slowly grows in volume. Black candles are used by the fraternities that stage penance processions after the death of Christ on Good Friday. Beyond Sevilla, the Guadalquivir flows through flat alluvial soil. Along its banks lies the Coto de Doñana National Park. It is Spain's most important wetland. It is also a refuge for rare species and migratory birds. Alongside different types of native crabs, The fiddler crab has made itself a home in the riverbank's mud. It's an invader from the tropics. The males draw attention to themselves with their oversized pinchers. In the mud, their bravado leads to mating success. The large pincher holds out the promise of protection to the female and her brood. Flamingos use the park to recuperate after long-distance flights. Their young have light feathers. They will turn red from the carotene-containing crabs they eat. Flamingo livers transform the color pigments, and the feathers grow pink. The river is still navigable for deep-sea freighters some 100 kilometers upstream from Sevilla. At the edge of the national park, pumps press salt water into large saline basins. Especially at high tide, hardly any river water flows downstream near the mouth of the river. The sun's rays evaporate the water, and what remains is sea salt. Today, it's an export hit, just as it was thousands of years ago. Tiny crabs populate the saline basins. They can survive the salty, low-oxygen conditions because they produce hemoglobin, which has oxygen-carrying capacity. The hemoglobin, or blood pigment, lets them and the water appear red. The castle of the Dukes of Medina Sidonia rises above Guadalquivir's estuary and the town of Sanlúcar de Barrameda. Nowadays, it is ruled by a band of hungry cats. The beach beneath the fortress is still all but deserted this early on a Sunday morning. Only a bell that tolls from the fisherman's chapel interrupts the calm. It is not just seamen and their families that make their way here to pray on Sundays. Sanlúcar has become a popular seaside resort for heat-plagued Andalusians. Services are always well attended. At the fish restaurant next door, there's no time to pray right now. The staff is getting ready for the first guests who will be arriving soon. What began as a rustic fisherman's tavern is now a smart gourmet restaurant. The kitchen prepares special lunches and dinners here for a sophisticated clientele. It goes without saying that only first-rate products are used.
I call that one right out there.
The fishing grounds beyond the nutrient-rich Guadalquivir estuary provide the cooks with an abundant supply of seafood. Fresh fish is always available in Sanlúcar, but this splendid miga, or salmon bass, is quite a treat even here. Filleting it calls for an expert, such as Jonathan Cordero.
The fish eggs are served with mayonnaise. They can be deep fried as well. But first, I'll need to bleed it.
Maria Rosario handles the fish roe almost tenderly, as if it were caviar. Guests come from far away to try this speciality.
There's a small fish inside this big one. I'll start with the fish head, and then I'll get to the body.
Jonathan is a master of his craft, and he wields his knife with great precision. Since he already paid a lot for the fish at the market, he needs to multiply the invested money over the next days. A dozen people live off of the restaurant. Despite time pressure, the family restaurant still takes the time to honor old customs. Jonathan is looking for two little bones in the fish's head. They are well hidden inside the inner ear, where their purpose is to facilitate hearing. These so-called statoliths, however, play an important role in popular belief.
This is the miga's ear bone. Since time immemorial, the people of San Luca have used it to make pendants, set in gold or silver. If the bones are small, women fashion them into earrings. A popular belief suggests that the bone is strength and life-giving, as well as a protection from disease.
In the late afternoon, the fishing cutters return to the harbour of San Lucar. The quay is already full of buyers who were sent by restaurants and supermarkets. The merchants have come to get a first glance of the catch's quality and quantity. The supply will determine auction prices, and thus a closer look can pay off. Customs and tax officials also have a good look at the merchandise. Nothing is allowed to leave the harbour unchecked.
We fished to 100 fathoms. You can see it here on the depth protocol. 100. Today was a laid-back day. Good weather and a good catch. We caught 300 kilograms of shrimps. This is where we caught the fish, some 20 miles off the coast.
Suddenly, things become hectic. A change in command.
We need to maneuver a bit. We need some room on the quay.
During rush hour, things need to move quickly. More and more fishing boats are running into port and want to unload their catch. San Lucar is Sevilla's fishing port as well. The harbour pilot will have his hands full for the next few hours. The next boat is already waiting in the main quay. Dozens of cutters caught large amounts today, and the fishermen are slightly worried. Will there be enough buyers? Will an oversupply drive prices down? In preparation for the auction, the various types of fish and crabs are weighed and grouped into similar portions. And then the electronic bidding system goes online. Monitors light up in the auction hall. Tension grows. Portmaster Jose Carlos Macias is monitoring the auction.
San Lucar's cuisine is traditionally centered on fish and seafood. More than 100 different types of fish are auctioned here. For each one, the auctioneer gives an estimated price. The buyers then make their bids, above or below this price. The highest bidder takes ownership of the crate.
The fish and seafood for the local restaurants' weekend business are also being auctioned off at this time. The most magnificent specimens are showcased in a glass box. Laid on ice, the migas and sea breams stay nice and fresh. Even in San Lucar, they command a considerable price. Businesses have to keep in mind the cost-effectiveness of their purchases. Manuel Rodriguez is responsible for food and drink.
Mi padre coge en el año 1993 un pequeño bar aquí en Bajo Guía.
In 1993, my father bought a small bar here at the beach, a tavern for fishermen and seamen. It opened at 5 a.m. when the fishing boats headed out to sea for the anchovy bags. My mother would prepare delicious snacks in the kitchen, but my father had outmoded ideas when it came to gastronomy, so I offered to take over the restaurant with my siblings. We changed it bit by bit and turned it into a flagship of a local cuisine.
Before launching into the busy weekend schedule, there is still time for a glass of beer or ice-cold manzanilla, the dry white wine from Sanlúcar. On the weekend, Manuel's best friends will tour some taverns by horse. The animals know the way, and the riders aren't likely to be stopped for alcohol testing in this horse country along the Guadalquivir. A stud farm is a status symbol. The whole area seems populated by horse lovers. Ivan Jimenez is the perfect example. For him, there is no other topic but horses.
I have high hopes of him. So far, he's always performed well in competitions, and he has a great future ahead of him.
Rising star Camarero means everything to Ivan. He takes him to the training grounds every day. Ivan is convinced that this horse has world-class talent. The riding arena and stables are not permanent. A golf course is being developed here. A new home for Camarero is already under construction. The cold shower is necessary. By morning, the temperatures hit 30 degrees. 40 degrees centigrade is expected later in the day.
I've harbored this passion from my earliest youth. My grandparents owned horses. Actually, they were mules for field work. My parents are bakers. My mother is from a family of wine growers.
Mi familia, mis padres son panaderos y por parte de mi madre se han dedicado a lo que es el viñedo. Para mí es un sueño.
To take part in the Olympic Games would be a dream come true. With Camarero, I may have a chance. I can see how much he's learning. You get up in the morning full of energy and you sense, now is the moment.
After the shower, it's back to the stables. It will be lunchtime soon. Camarero and the other horses are owned by businessman Francis Guerrero Baez.
His step is getting better, as his is gallop.
Ivan keeps Francis up to date about Camarero's progress.
I was born in Frankfurt with Spanish roots. My parents are from Sanlúcar and Cadiz. I went to school in Germany. In Frankfurt, I studied and trained there. And after many years, I went into business. Olive oil exports, wine. My dream was to one day own a stud farm. And so it came, and I wound up here at the mouth of the Guadalquivir. I started out in the music business. I played in several rock bands in Frankfurt, funk and rock. I produced music in my own studio and performed as well. During the 80s and 90s as well. I also worked with Spanish bands, even did some flamenco pop and flamenco rock. My guitar collection is in here, the complete collection. Altogether 8 guitars, electric guitars, bass and all that. A ferry connects the riverbanks at the Guadalquivir estuary.
Eduardo Ibanez is responsible for the smooth loading and unloading operations. Only rarely does he have trouble with the passengers. It's a quiet job.
I've been employed in this ferry for 5 years now. I used to work in the fields harvesting potatoes, tomatoes, melons and bell peppers.
Things are not always calm on the Guadalquivir stretched out before Eduardo's eyes. The river is a popular transit route for drug smugglers. On speedboats, they transport illegal goods from international waters into the backcountry. The police stopped another suspicious boat today. For the ferryman, this is routine and no reason to get excited. Vehicles crossing over need all-terrain capabilities. Loading and unloading is possible only from the beach. Cars need special permits to cross, so the jeeps used by national park rangers are practically the only motorized users. The horses are hesitant to use the slippery ramp. Eduardo is well aware of their aversion towards his ferry, but the proud caballero won't be deterred. With an empty deck, Eduardo can be generous. Horse and rider may try their luck. Another crossing to the other shore, but the Olga can soon call it a day. For Maestro Manuel, on the other hand, the work is just starting.
I'm preparing king prawns from San Luca. They're from yesterday's catch. They're cooking in very hot water. Now they're rising to the surface, and this means they're done. Next, they're dropped into salmuera, salted ice water. Contact with cold water causes the shells to detach, and they become easier to peel.
Everyone in this business knows success is not a foregone conclusion. That's why the menu always features popular classics along with new dishes. Ham from free-range pigs is always popular, provided it is properly filleted. Especially when it comes to tapas, Andalusians, with their sophisticated palates, are always looking for a surprise. As far as fish is concerned, he's quite conservative. Garlic and oil, sautéed or steamed. Everyone likes it that way. For vegetarians, this restaurant wouldn't exactly be a first choice. Maria Rosario can't put a number to the fish she fillets on any given day. Crammed together in a tiny kitchen, well-rehearsed teamwork is a must. And the term family business is not just an empty phrase at this restaurant. Everyone is somehow related. The guests feel at home here as well. Many have been coming to eat at the Avante Claro for decades.
In previous times, ships leaving San Luca still had to sail a stretch along the river. There's a rocky shoal in the estuary where many ships ran aground. All those who successfully navigated it yelled out the command, "Avanti e claro," full speed ahead. So now this seafaring expression is the namesake of our restaurant.
The beautiful view can't distract Jose Angel, but things don't always go according to plan. Especially the in-crowd from Sevilla can be rather demanding and difficult. But things never escalate. The waiters' dispositions are much too sunny for that, and they can always tell a story. There's always something interesting that they can point out to guests.
My name is Alfredo. When he was young, my father spent several years working in Germany. One winter, he was ice skating on a river and broke through a patch of thin ice. A Dutch couple that had been watching saved his life. The couple had a son named Alfredo, or Freddy. In gratitude, my father gave me that name.
The workday ends for the Olga and her ferryman Eduardo. Ship and crew will spend the night in San Lucar. There's room on the beach now for a little round in the mule-drawn carriage, past the Camacho's restaurant and its hungry guests. The great river, Guadalquivir, flows on. Only a few more wavelengths and it will reach the Atlantic Ocean. And from there, continue onward, beyond the horizon.